Skeletal system. The skeletal system is involved in body locomotion and provides the basic morphology of the body that allows us to maintain a bipedal posture, that is, in 2 feet. The locomotor apparatus consists of bones joined to each other by joints and ligaments. Tendons connect muscle to bone continuously. The nervous system coordinates all the parts. Structure and function. An adult has 206 bones, while children have 300. This is because during growth, some bony pieces are fused. By its shape, we can classify the bone as flat, long, irregular, and sesamoid. Bones consist of bone tissue, which is a specialized type of connective tissue made of cells, the osteocytes, surrounded by a hardened matrix, the matrix of bone. According to the organization of the bone elements, there are 2 types of bone, the compact and the spongy. Bone structure. The skeleton divides into 2 regions, the axial skeleton, which includes the bones of the head and torso, sternum, spine, and ribs, and the appendicular skeleton, which is formed by the extremities. The number of bones varies with age. On average, in the adult, there are 206. The variation is due to the presence of the sesamoid bones, which grow inside tendons in response to stress. The diseases are fracture and osteoporosis. To prevent this, include the intake of dairy products, fruits, and vegetables, nuts, fish, and eggs. Muscular system. Skeletal muscles, tendons, ligaments, cartilage, and bones allow us to stand upright and move. Structure and function. There are different types of muscles such as smooth, skeletal, and cardiac. We're going to focus on the skeletal striated muscle. The skeletal striated muscle fibers are elongated and multinucleated cells of cylindrical morphology with a pattern of transverse traits that are not easy to observe under a microscope. The cytoplasm of each skeletal striated muscle cell contains a contractile apparatus constituted by the myofibrils, which are the thin filaments of actin, and the thick filaments of myosin. Both form the sarcomere, that is the functional unit of the striated muscle. The relaxation contraction cycle in a skeletal muscle cell begins when cells respond to the nervous stimulus, which favors the release of calcium II, plus in the smooth endoplasmic reticulum, myosin sticks to the actin, and this one moves over the myosin, shortening the sarcomere. Then the relaxation phase carries ATP energy, which divides into adenosine diphosphate and P, allowing the thin filaments to slide back to their original position. The functional muscle groups. To perform different movements, muscle working groups. Agonist produces most of the force during muscle action. Synergist, it helps the maintain muscle to achieve more power. Antagonist, this movement opposes the main muscle. Fixer, it prevents a bone from moving to allow the movement of something else. The different diseases are sprain, luxation, tear, and cramp. The best way to prevent them is to accept the doctor's advice as to what type of exercise is most convenient for each person.
The integumentary system comprises the skin, hair, sweat glands, and nails. Some of its functions are the mechanical protections against pathogens, biological protections against the UV rays, regulation of body temperature, sense perception, hydroelectric regulation, synthesis of vitamin D, and immunological function. There are 2 types of skin, the thick skin and the thin skin. The thick one is found only in the palms of the hand and in the soles of the feet. The thin skin is the one that covers most of the body. The skin is divided into 3 layers, the epidermis, dermis, and hypodermis. The epidermis is the superficial layer. Here is where we found the 4 types of cells: keratinocytes, melanocytes, Langerhans cells, and Merkel cells. The dermis is divided into papillary dermis and reticular dermis. Here is where we found the hair follicles and the sweat glands. The hypodermis is made of adipose tissue, and the other part of the integumentary systems are the nails that are made of hard keratin. Some of its diseases are the acne and skin cancers, and some prevention measures for these are avoiding tanning beds, using sunscreen, and hydrate properly.
The nervous system has 2 major divisions: the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. The central nervous system includes the encephalon and the spinal cord. The peripheral nervous system comprises the totality of the peripheral nerves and their associated ganglia. Nervous system divides into voluntary nervous system and autonomic nervous system. Autonomic controls the automatic bodily functions such as breathing, control of heart rate, and digestion. The rest of the functional systems involving the origin and regulation of voluntary behavior are considered part of the voluntary nervous system. General functional organization of the nervous system is divided into three: motor system, sensory system, and cognitive system. The glial cells are divided into several subtypes: astrocytes, oligodendrocytes, microglial cells or microglia, Schwann cells, and ependymal cells. Synapses are one of the most evident characteristics of nervous tissue. Its structure resembles a complex interconnected network of cells neurons. There are two types, chemical and electrical. The chemical synapses are the interactions between the neurons and is mediated by a chemical substance called a neurotransmitter. The electrical synapses, there is no chemical mediator but a direct communication channel or port between the cells. There are two different types of neurotransmitters, small molecule and neuropeptides. The neurotransmitters of this molecule enable rapid interneuronal communication. Neuropeptides are involved in the long-term modulation of chemical synapses. Anatomically, the cerebral hemispheres are divided into lobes. The brain has 5 lobes: the frontal, the parietal, the temporary, occipital, and insular. The most common diseases of the nervous system are Alzheimer's disease. It is the most frequent cause of dementia worldwide. It can occur in individuals older than 65 years and is characterized by the progressive loss of memory. Epilepsy is characterized by the presence and recurrence of various types of crises of cerebral origin, which can have very distinctive manifestations depending on the site of origin in the brain. Parkinson's disease. It is characterized by the tremor in the extremities, the limitation for muscle mobility, and slowness in general movements of the body.
The immune system is a complex system consisting of cellular components and secretions, whose function is to recognize between the own and foreign agents in our body, thus providing defense mechanisms against infections. Innate immunity is the first line of defense that our body has. It is an immediate response and non-specific. It is composed by the physical barriers such as the skin and mucous membranes, the cellular components as neutrophils, macrophages, eosinophils, basophils, mast cells, and natural killer cells, in addition to some proteins which recognize the surface of pathogens and cytokines to provoke inflammation. Also known as specific or acquired, this type of immunity is adaptive, characterized by a delayed response and its memory as it is capable of recognizing pathogens with which it had contact in the past, and is specific for each pattern of pathogens. It is composed by T and B lymphocytes. Humoral and cellular immune response. If the B lymphocytes fight against the antigen, it is called a humoral response, while if the T lymphocytes are involved, it is called cellular immune response. According to their function, lymphoid tissue and organs can be classified as primary lymphoid organs, which are the medulla and the thymus, or as secondary or peripheral lymphoid organs, such as the lymph nodes, spleen, tonsils, and mold. Another division is according to their morphology, in the encapsulated and non-encapsulated lymphoid organs. In the first group, we can find the thymus, the lymph nodes, and the spleen, which are covered with a layer of connective tissue, while in the second group are the mold and the tonsils, that lack the peripheral layer of connective tissue. Allergies are a response of an organism when exposed to a substance that commonly produces no reaction. Some examples of this are the asthma, rhinitis, dermatitis, food allergy, or to some medication. Autoimmune diseases occurs when the body starts attacking itself. One example of this is the systemic lupus erythematosus, in which the immune system produces antibodies against cellular components, in particular the kidneys, skin, mucous membranes, cardiovascular system, nervous system, and the respiratory system are the most affected ones. Both these diseases can be treated if properly diagnosed by a doctor.
The circulatory system is composed of blood, heart, and blood vessels. Its function is to bring the blood and its content to all the cells of the organism. The arteries conduct oxygenated blood, except for the pulmonary arteries, which carry the oxygenated blood to the lungs. On the other hand, the veins carry the oxygenated blood to the heart, except for the pulmonary veins, which carry oxygenated blood from the lungs to the left atrium. The major or systemic circuit starts in the left ventricle and ends in the right atrium. The minor or pulmonary circuit starts in the right ventricle and ends in the left atrium. The heart is a hollow muscular organ inside the thorax between the lungs. The space it occupies is called the middle mediastinum. It consists of three layers: the visceral epicardium or pericardium, the myocardium, and the endocardium. Some cardiovascular diseases are the atherosclerosis, the myocardial infarction, the heart failure, the arterial hypertension, and the congenital heart disease. The atherosclerosis is due to the formation of plaques of lipids, cholesterol, calcium, and inflammatory cells. This in the interior of one or several coronary arteries. The myocardial infarction is the death or necrosis of a group of cells of the myocardium due to the lack of blood flow. This lack is caused by the obstruction of the branch of the coronary arteries. The heart failure is an imbalance between the ability of the heart to pump blood and the needs of the body. It can be caused by diseases of the heart or as a consequence of other ailments. The arterial hypertension is an elevation of blood pressure level continually or sustained. A blood pressure of 130/80 or higher is already considered hypertension. This condition is a risk to the heart and other organs. The congenital heart disease is any morphological or functional alteration of the heart that is present from the moment of birth. There are many types and combinations of congenital heart diseases. For example, defects in the internal septa or abnormal communication between the great arteries, partial or total obstruction of any of the valves of the heart or some portions of the great artery or the infundibula. Other is an abnormal connection between the heart cavities. And the last one is combination of various defects in the heart.
Endocrine system. The endocrine system is made up of groups of cells that form glands isolated in the epithelium of the respiratory and digestive system. In both cases, the cells secrete molecules that function as chemical messengers called hormones. The actions of hormones control the functioning of organs and tissues to maintain homeostasis, as well as reproduction and development. Glands of the endocrine system. The pituitary gland is located in the cella turcica
a cavity at the base of the skull. This gland is connected to the hypothalamus. The pituitary consists of adenohypophysis and neurohypophysis. The pineal gland. It synchronizes the circadian rhythm, regulates the mood and sexual maturation. The thyroid gland increases metabolism, regulates the production of heat, and stimulates the growth of the tissues and the function of other glands. The parathyroid gland stimulates the bone resorption and absorption of calcium in the intestine. The adrenal gland increases sodium reabsorption and potassium excretion in the kidney, so it increases blood pressure. The pancreatic islets increase or decrease blood glucose and stimulates the secretion of gastric enzymes.
The reproductive system, both female and male, combined with the endocrine system, are responsible for producing the gametes or sex cells that will give rise to a new being. Structure and function. It consists of the organs that participate in the intercourse, the penis, and the vagina. The reproductive system is responsible for pregnancy and childbirth. The female reproductive system is composed of the internal genital organs, which include the ovaries, which are organs with the size of an almond that are responsible for the production of female gametes. The uterine tubes are pairs of tubular organs. The uterus has three parts: the upper zone, where the oviducts are inserted, the portion of the center is the body, and the lower portion is the cervix, which extends into the vagina. The vagina is a tubular organ. Its functions are to act as an outlet for the menstrual flow. The vulva includes the external genitalia. The mammary glands are organs located in the interior part of the thorax. Milk producing occurs here. Menstrual cycle. Hormones regulate process as the maturation of oocytes, ovulation, and the preparation of the uterus for implantation. These hormones are secreted cyclically and give rise to the stages or phases of the menstrual cycle, which lasts on average 28 days. The male reproductive system is conformed by testicles, which are organs located in the scrotal bags that keep them out of the abdominal cavity. Inside each testicle are the seminiferous tubules where sperm develop. Testosterone is also produced in the test, the hormone responsible for spermatogenesis and the development of secondary sexual characteristics. The conduits of the male reproductive system. Their function is to protect and drive sperm from the testicle to the urethra. The accessory gland. The semen is made up of the sperm and the secretions of the accessory glands, which are the seminal vesicles. The prostate is an organ located around the prostatic urethra, and its secretion protects the sperm. And the penis is a copulatory organ. It has a urethra, which is the route for ejaculation and emission of urine. There are different diseases that are sexually transmitted, and some of them are caused by bacterium and can be very painful and highly contagious. There are different ways to avoid pregnancy, such as the physical methods, the chemical methods, and the partial abstinence.